I'd like to call to order this special called meeting of the Mecklenburg County School Board for public input for our 2018 budget. Madam Clerk, roll call. Oh, I timed that perfectly, didn't I?
Mr. Sturdivant?
Here.
Mrs. Bailey?
Present.
Mr. Palmer?
Present.
Mr. Honeycutt? Mr. Campbell? Mrs. Garner?
Present.
Mr. Johnson?
Present.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Mr. Ritchie?
Present. All right, now we have our Pledge of Allegiance. If we'll all stand for our Pledge of Allegiance and our moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's see. The adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion that the school board adopts tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Garner, seconded by Mr. Sturdivant. Roll call.
Mr. Sturdivant?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mrs. Garner?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yes. All right, our topic tonight is the 2018 budget. Is that a presentation for us?
Tonight is the night that the public gets a chance to come and address concerns or questions that they may have for our budget as proposed. The first draft, last Monday night at our regular school board meeting. As the board knows, we take these public comments into consideration, and then you as the board gets a chance to have input and make adjustments so that we can look to pass a budget at our March meeting, and then we will take that budget to the board supervisors.
All right, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
I have Mr. Bain Cameron.
Do you want to read your comments before he gets started?
If you want to just hold on a minute, sure. At this time, we invite the public to speak on the topic of the 2018 budget only. Public comments at board meetings are just one of many avenues for communication, and the board recognizes and appreciates the importance of input from and communication with the public we represent. The public was invited to sign up to speak. The clerk of the school board will have your name and contact information if you ask to speak prior to the meeting. The public is allowed up to 6 minutes to express their views only on the 2018 budget. Please respect that time limitation. It will be enforced. If there are many to be heard, we will limit your time to 3 minutes. As a reminder, it is inappropriate at a public meeting to make personal attacks, to be defamatory, or to disparage individuals or identifiable groups. Again, we welcome and appreciate your input regarding the 2018 budget. Prior to beginning your comment, please state your name to the board. Mr. Cameron.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent Nichols. My name is Bain Cameron. I live in South Hill, and I hope, Mrs. Bailey, that the admonitions given weren't in particular a reference to what you were afraid I might say. I wanted to speak this evening about two different items. The first is the concept of a zero-base budget. You may or may not be familiar with that. The idea, as I understand it, is that in budgeting, one model is that you look at last year's budget and you say, well, what do we want to do differently? What do we want to do the same? You use last year's budget as the model, as the template to tweak to go forward. My understanding of a zero-based budget is you essentially say, what's our purpose? What is our goal? What is our mission? What do we need to do? What do we need to do to accomplish that? And how can we do it? How else can we do it? And what is each of those things going to cost? I would suggest that that is probably not a practical suggestion for this year. As I've seen it implemented in the past in other areas, it is a process that takes probably more time than you realistically have this year. So I'm suggesting this to you as something to take into consideration for next year's budget cycle. I would probably encourage you not to think about it for this year. I guess I would offer a couple comments in that regard. The one is I have seen this implemented. This can be implemented in such a way that it is a waste of staff time, of paper, of rhetoric, and you get a lot of gobbledygook that probably doesn't mean a lot even to the staff that is preparing it. It may, I don't know if it sounds good, it probably looks good on paper, but it doesn't really mean much, and I've seen a process this happen where they ended up, but for inflation adjustments, probably about where they started, and it really was a waste of time. I think there is value in it if it's approached from a common sense standpoint, not simply to get back to and justify what you're already doing, but really take a hard look at what it is that is being done that maybe doesn't need to be done. What is it that is being done that could be done perhaps in a very significant, different way? And also, what are things that maybe should be done that for whatever reason have been set aside, overlooked for some period of time? I think one particular advantage that I saw in Mr. Nichols' presentation last week at the school board meeting was specifically in the area of faculty salaries. As I understood it from the comments presented, Mecklenburg right now is at the bottom of, is it region 10? Whatever region we're, 8, I'm sorry. There probably aren't 10 regions. Whatever region we're in, 8, we're at the bottom of that. The proposal was for a 5% increase, which would get us part way up, 4 or 5 places up maybe, with the goal being long-term to get to the middle of the pack. One advantage of a zero-based budget is to say, well, if we want to be in the middle, then that's what we want to happen, and that's what we're going to budget for, and we're not going to take it in steps. We're going to say, we want this, we think this is needed now, and that's where it comes out. Of course, there's only a certain pool, but when you're looking at the things individually and saying, what do we need to accomplish that, and perhaps you get to the things you want quicker, and you get rid of the things that you don't want and don't need, and nobody can really justify when it comes right down to it. So that's a thought for you. The other item I wanted to really ask you a couple of questions about was the transportation budget. Okay, somebody can join me by microphone. Is the transportation budget, as I saw on slides 19 and 20, represents is over $4 million of your expenditures proposed, not quite 10% of your budget. And there were two thoughts I have in this regard. One is looking forward to the possibility or probability or certainty, depending where that falls out, of new facilities. I hope, and as I understood right, this is the year in which there's a, thank you, in which there's a perhaps a capital purchase cycle of buses, if I understood right, and I'm seeing shaking heads of no. So lease, okay, okay. Well, then that maybe already speaks to part of my thought. Instead of, if we are truly within a bus lifetime cycle of having new facilities, I hope that the board and the transportation department and the superintendent's office are looking at not our needs for next year, but our needs for where we're going to be before these buses expire, live their useful life. And if that means instead of purchasing, leasing, or perhaps even contracting out for services as a short-term stopgap to get to where you may, I presume, need less buses in whatever new configuration the schools would have, that we're not investing capital expenditures now that we turn out that we don't need down the line. I would hope, and I'm sure, well, if I remember right, the report that was provided to the board the report that was done about a year or so ago, did look at transportation costs, and that was one of the, not deciding, but important factors that went into the decision of where facility or facilities may be located. My recollection was it was amazing that to the nearest $1,000, there wasn't a whole lot of change over the current expenditures. And so I hope you would look at that. May I have another minute to address the other aspect of transportation, or is this a strict limit? Okay. The only other thought, and this is really a question to throw out to the board, I would be interested in seeing ridership numbers for the existing school bus and school bus routes. My impression is, and maybe I'm wrong, you can shake your head at this too, is that all students in the county are provided a seat on a bus that serves their area, and so that if everybody rode the buses, we're providing for everybody. My observation in my neighborhood and driving around town and seeing buses roll out of the schools is that there are a number of unoccupied seats, and it might be instructive to look at what the actual ridership is, budget for what services are being demanded, not all services that could be provided. Obviously, there'd need to be a contingency. What if 10% more students suddenly decide to ride the buses for whatever reason? But I wonder if we could save some money in the transportation budget if ridership were looked at rather than county population and enrollment. So, thank you.
That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have an opportunity to respond to one of Mr. Cameron's concerns.
All right.
I would agree on the zero-based budget. Just to state that this year, we started actually July 1st, beginning calendar loaded for the year. In many ways, we had to do it last year because we didn't have the data to go by. But we have a calendar that we look at for administrators, teachers, school board members, I, as superintendent, directors, have the opportunity to go in and talk about the goals that we have, the things we need. Bill have been working on that process all through the year based on that zero-based budget, which is good, because it is very much represented as a so thank you for your basically reinforcement of that being that way for us to go. Now, on the salary issue, because the board of supervisors will tend to look at what they have provided for this benefit quality issue in the past, and the salary being the biggest component of the budget. We basically have to go back and be able to say to them, we are asking related to salary, and it's broken down by different categories because salaries come in instruction, some administration, some other areas. We have to break it down into those categories as well. So, but we do look at increases on a percentile basis compared to the low. So I just, as much as anything else as well, we're trying to go to the press and the public. That's the process. Thank you.
We're to board member remarks. We want to start, Ms. Garner, you want to start?
I just hope we can get the salary increases for the teachers with this new budget. I will say, if you have nothing to do this weekend, you can run up to Blacksburg and watch the robotics team,
Oh, that's this weekend.
the first competition.
Mr. Sturtevant?
No comment.
Mr. Johnson? No comment. Ms. Bailey?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing? Yeah, I'm with Ms. Garner and hope that the Board of Supervisors will support the raise, because that, like Mr. Cameron said, that'll move us up a few spots and kind of get us towards our goal of getting towards, at least to the mean, and maybe eventually above the mean. Maybe alleviate some of the problems we have recruiting teachers and retaining them. Mr. Edwards?
Nothing, no comment.
Mr. Palmer?
I just want to thank all of the organizations that recognized this last, board meeting. Hopefully this will be carried throughout the newspaper. We were recognized quite a bit, and I want to thank all of the different organizations.
All right. Reminders, the 13th, Teacher Workday, no school for students. The 15th, Parent-Teacher Conference at the elementary schools from 4 to 6:30. The 16th, Parent-Teacher Conferences at the middle school from 4 to 6:30. And if we don't have anything else, are we all?
Superintendent's got
Superintendent, oh, I'm sorry.
This is just almost hot off the press. I've got to find it.
We won the lottery.
Yeah.
Who played?
The time has been set for the education committee to meet, and it's not next week as expected. I got the email message, and I'm looking forward to it. It was suggested that our committee meeting would be March the 16th at 5 p.m. And I just thought that would be a better way to do that.
15th.
15th?
No,
16th?
Thursday. And that's supposed to be here this time, right, Mr. Edwards?
I'm not sure. I'll check and let you know.
I think that's what we had decided.
We talked about it, but as you know, everything is subject to change.
And what, did you say 6 or 5?
5. Since I didn't set the time, I didn't know if I'll set the place either. I know.
Does it have a place on the email?
All right. Anything else? If we don't have anything else, do I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
No,
Yes.
all right, thank you very much.